Thank you for taking the time to do this interview, and welcome to my little interview series that I do. We are here with a very special guest today. You might recognize him from Friday Night Lights, Shooter, The Last of Us, Call of Duty, and like the 40,000 other video games he may be in. Thank you, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Just chilling out here on a Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles.
I'm not noticing an Australian flag behind you. Have you been
No,
to
I
Australia?
haven't. I've never been.
Wow.
So I have on this back wall here just some of I guess all the countries I've been to. But I've never been to Australia, man.
Yep. Wow. Not yet.
I
I
need to.
I was watching some interviews with you to get, the lay of the land, and I remember you interviewed with Dan, and you were talking about Australia. Then you still haven't been. Well, you still haven't
I
been.
know, man. I still haven't been. It's terrible. It's
Is
terrible.
is Marty still giving you crap about it?
Of course. Yeah. I talk to Marty all the time. He's one of my favorite Australians.
Favorite Australia? That you got to visit one day. I reckon you got to
I
visit.
know, man. It's crazy because there's so many Australians in Los Angeles, especially in this business. I always talk about it. There's an Australian mafia. There's a ton of Australian guys in the business. I'm always impressed though because it seems like there's a real sense of community among a lot of the Australians that work in Los Angeles. They seem to really take care of each other. They all know each other. Um, there was actually I was at a bar probably about 10 years ago, and I was sitting there. It was dead. There were maybe 6 or 7 people in there, and next thing I know, like 30 Australians come walking in, and they're all dressed to the nines. And I just trying to figure out what the hell was going on. There was a little back patio area, and I walked out to the back patio, and I asked one of the guys. I said, "What's going on here?" And he said, "Well, Heath Ledger, before he passed away, started a scholarship essentially for like any Australians, actors in male and female that moved to the States, and basically." Once a year, I don't know if this still goes on, but like once a year, they gave a guy and a girl like a full ride in Los Angeles for a year, got them hooked up with agents, basically took
Wow.
care of all the bills and all that other stuff. But I just thought what a cool thing that was, the way that the Australian community just kind of looks after each other and takes care of each other.
Yep. I know. I I love it here, but also there are so many things that can kill you. Like if you walk out, you can look at about
Yes.
30 of them that can kill you.
That's not what's preventing me from going there. I've never had like a real, most of the places I've visited, most of the places I've been in the world have
Hmm.
been because of work.
Yeah.
And I've never gotten a gig in Australia. I just need to
Hey,
get a gig in Australia and then I'll come out there,
come do
man.
some Australian rom com or something. Just get you to get over here.
Yes. Easy.
Well, if you could go to Australia for a role, what would you want it to be?
Oh man.
What about the
That's a great.
people, the people that just go into the wildlife and?
No, I mean, I would love to do something like Gallipoli or something like that. Not a remake of Gallipoli or anything, but I'm fascinated by the outback in Australia, and I think it'd be really, really cool just to have some. I remember seeing Australia, the movie Australia with Hugh Jackman, and just thinking, you guys have your own kind of Wild West out there, kind of the same way that we did in the United States. And I think it'd be really, really cool to just be on a horse somewhere in the outback doing something, you
I
know?
think that'd be a cool set to be on. Gets you an excuse out here, and then you have fun filming.
Knowing all the jerks I play in film and television, though, I'm sure I would probably be up to no good.
It's funny, actually. My first question, one of my favorite shows, top five, is actually Shooter. It's the first role that I
Mhm.
saw you in, playing Earl Swagger in season three.
Yeah.
Was it? I think it was season three.
So, yeah, yeah,
What was that
yeah.
experience like? Like, how did you get cast to it, and what was the whole filming experience like? Because you play this, like, you do the tapes, you're all mysterious, and what was that
Yeah.
like?
It was great, man. It was one of those when I actually got the audition for it. If you remember, my first scene in the show is when I get shot. We find out this isn't a spoiler. I mean, the minute we meet Earl Swagger, he's dead like a
Yep.
second later. And then it's all flashbacks from that point on. But yeah, my first scene that I auditioned with was that first scene where I'm, walking through the field with a gun in my hand, and it's one of those things when you're going in for an audition, it's like, how do I replicate this without looking like a jackass, you know? Uh, and so I remember talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, I think you just got to go all in. You got to pantomime the gun, and I had like a flashlight with me, and
Yep.
so I'm just and there's distance between me and the other character, so I use that distance in the audition, and it's like, hey man, come on out. I know you're in there. Just come on out, and just really give it your all. If you half-ass it, you're definitely not going to get the job. So, but I was kind of surprised, honestly, that I got it. I was playing Ryan Phillips' dad, and I think there is maybe a little bit of a resemblance between Ryan and I. But up until that point, I hadn't really played anything militaristic. And so I didn't really know if that was going to be something that other people saw me as. And so getting that job was kind of it was great for me on a lot of levels. Namely that from that point on, I went from playing a sheriff in that show and a former Marine. And then from there, it was like I started booking Marines and snipers and sheriffs and FBI agents left and right. So I think it kind of changed the way I was looked at in the industry,
Just
which was great for me.
do that one role and then you get typecast into this role and that role, and
Hey, I've always said it's better to be typecast than not cast.
because
So
you're
I'll
getting work.
100%, 100%. And for years, as much as I love Friday Night Lights, it was also kind of a badge of dishonor in some respects because I played this character, Billy Riggins, who was, kind of this bumbling idiot drunk. And I loved the show and I loved playing that part. But when it's over with, then everyone sees you as that. And so it was kind of difficult for, I think, the industry to take me seriously after that part. And so to play a part like Earl Swagger was really, really fun. Yeah, I'm
It,
glad I got the opportunity.
I love that role, and I remember there was a scene where you were in these little like bamboo little like cages, and you're with your other soldiers doing the training for the. I can't remember the group that was in, obviously based in Shooter. Like, what was shooting those scenes like? Because they made it look really hot, and you did.
They do a great job of making it look really hot because if I remember correctly, like it was just a beautiful Southern California day. All that stuff was shot in Southern California, which is also crazy. So all of the stuff that takes place in Vietnam, they literally went out and found like the most green patch of land that you've ever seen in Southern California because we don't have a ton of green. And we shot it out on this ranch that is specifically made to shoot like Vietnam jungle type area.
Ah,
And then
yep.
they went in and they sprayed a lot of the background down with green just to give it that lush kind of feel because we don't have, that rainforest kind of very tropical environment anywhere in Los Angeles. So they did a really great job. If you turn the camera in any direction other than that, though, you can see all of that light brown that is kind of Los Angeles. It's a desert out here essentially, so you don't have that lush greenery.
Funny you say that
So
because that scene they did really well at making it look like you're sweating your ass off in the little
yes,
cage there. Um,
the cage immediately lifted up, and I was over there in the corner, sipping
yeah.
down. Yeah, not hot at all. It's probably 70 degrees out that
Did you get to meet the cast, like the main cast from the original two seasons as well?
Yeah, man, Ryan came to set a couple. Well, Ryan was also a producer on it. And Ryan came to set a couple of times, and he could not have been more encouraging, from day one. And it really just kind of made me feel like I was a part of this show and part of this cast, which I have a podcast and I've discussed that before. Coming into shows as a guest star can be really kind of daunting, especially a show that's been going for a while. Because you come in, you're the new guy. There's already everyone has their cliques, their groups. Um, so it can be really, really daunting when you come into that situation. And that was one of those shows where from day one I was made to feel like I was part of that cast and an important part of that cast, which is it's huge as an actor to kind of get that vote of confidence from not only your producers, but the other actors that you're working with.
Hundred
And it
percent.
was also a really cool experience for me because I have been a guest star on, I think at this point, close to 60 TV shows. Um, and so this was one of the few times where even though I was the guest star, it was a B storyline, but the storyline was all about me. And so it was the first time that they have a thing in this business called a button, where if you and I are in the scene, the main character, most likely, the camera's going to end on them. Because it's not important what my reaction is in this scene. It's important, you know what I mean? So if I'm the main character in this scene and it's a scene between the two of us, the camera's going to end on what my reaction is because we as an audience care about what the main character in that scene is concerned with and we want to see what his reaction is. So it was a weird experience for me a great experience to get the button to have the camera on me at the end. So whatever the scene was that was going on, the camera comes back to me in the end to see how I feel about this, how my character reacts to it. And as a guest star on most of these shows, that's not the experience. Usually you're on camera with the lead actor and the lead actor gets that button. So it was nice to get that. It was definitely different experience for me.
One of the things I say, being on quite a few sets myself, if the vibe is good, everyone's going to be good. You know, if the
There's a
direct
saying we have that the fish stinks from the head down, and that holds true in this business as well. If the people at the top of the call sheet and the producers are jerks, usually that's where the strife and the vitriol happens among the rest of the cast. But usually when the people up top are good, it's a trickle down effect.
some
And
of
yeah, that was those really, really wonderful experiences. As I said, Ryan couldn't have been nicer. He was extremely encouraging, came to set. I remember there was one of the scenes we were shooting where it was like a Vietnam scene. I think it was like my second or third episode. And he took the time to pull me aside and said, "Hey man, I just watched that opening scene that I had, the one where I get shot." And he said, "Man, the work was just really beautiful." And it makes you feel great, and then it allows you, I think, as the guest actor to do your best work at that point in time.
the second question I have is a bit of a funny one. It's kind of a blast from the past for you, but your
Mhm.
first ever credited IMDb role was a field guard in Prison Break. And
Yes.
I was laughing because it's your first year and your first role was the year I was born.
Oh, really? Now
Yeah,
I feel
I
old.
know that's not making you feel any younger at all.
You know what's interesting about that is that the credit shows up on my IMDb as my first like film on camera, like for film. I'd done some soap opera work before then in the States, but that stuff is kind of, small comparison. I was actually shooting Friday Night Lights first when I got the Prison Break job. So
Oh, okay.
I had shot I think maybe 6 or 7 episodes of Friday Night Lights at that point. And then I got a phone call from my agent. She's like, "Hey, they you just booked a job on Prison Break. Would you be able to do that? I know you're shooting on Friday Night Lights this week." And I was like, "Yeah, I think I'll be able to do it." Well, Friday Night Lights shot down in Austin. Prison Break was shooting in Dallas at the time. So I had wrapped on Friday Night Lights at like 12 o'clock midnight that night and drove to Dallas, got in, stayed at a friend's house, and then shot the next morning on Prison Break. And I just remember being exhausted that whole entire day, like literally running on fumes and barely being able to keep my eyes open. And it was just this tiny little part on Prison Break. But when you're, a young actor trying to establish yourself. It's like, give me any role, anywhere, anytime. But that was one of those moments I remember that day specifically because it was just a short scene, but I was also in the background for a lot of stuff. And it was like a 12-hour day, and I just remember being exhausted, like barely being able to keep my eyes open.
It's funny you say that. Similar to what I do with my interviews, a lot of people are based in LA or a country that is not Australia, and you know, I take any interviews because usually the people that I message are people that I really want to interview. So if you say yes, I'm doing it. And the first interview that said yes is at 4:30 next week in the morning because that's the only time he's got for months. And it's like, okay, I'll do it. I mean, I'll do it, but
I tried not to kill you today on this one. So it's 3 o'clock my time.
it
What
is
time is it for
it is
you?
now 10 o'clock for me. It's
10
10
p.m.?
no 10 a.m. 10 a.m.
Oh,
We're
10
good.
a.m.
We're
Yeah,
good.
that's perfect.
This is great.
You better be up at 10 a.m. Come
I
on.
know. This nah, 10 a.m. is fine. It is the 4:30 a.m. that got to be a bit more stressful.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah, I shot a film probably about 8 years ago in India. And on top of it, there's a half-hour difference. So it's like there was an 8.5 hour difference. There's a half thing. I don't know what that's about in India. But that made it really, really nerve-wracking, especially since I'm like a sports fan. So I was up at like 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes watching games that had just started, and they wouldn't finish till 5 o'clock in the morning. So that made for really terrible, terrible days the next morning.
Next question, actually, I got for you. Sorry to cut you off from that, but
Oh, all good.
so another one of my favorite shows is The Rookie, and you make a little appearance in 2 episodes as Mac Daniels in The Rookie. Working
Yeah.
with some really cool people, and I wanted to know like what that whole experience was like for you.
once again, just another really, really friendly cast. We were shooting that one. It was a little strange because it was in the middle of the pandemic. And so my first episode of The Rookie, uh, it was really kind of awkward because you show up to set and they have these little like pods that they would put you in, like your own individual plastic pod, because they were trying to, keep everyone distanced from each other. And so the minute you'd shoot your scene, you put your mask back on, and if they were, if they didn't need you on set for a minute, you'd go sit in your pod and zip yourself. It was like a little personalized tent, and all of us were facing each other, all the other actors, and so we're all having conversations inside our little pods. It was surreal, but it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and specifically, the Rookie was very, very strict about everyone following the rules. Because at that point in time, if somebody was diagnosed with COVID, the whole production had to shut down, basically. Um, which I had that experience as well. I was working on a show called NCIS Hawaii. I shot my first day, didn't have any symptoms at all. That was on a Friday. And that Saturday afternoon, excuse me, I remember I went shopping in Hawaii, and I'm walking down the street and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had gotten tickets to go see the one of the new Thor movies that night. And around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to see that Thor movie. And by 4 in the afternoon, I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to get out of bed. And I knew right then, I didn't get tested until that Monday, but I knew that Saturday night that I had it because I hadn't felt anything like that before. And so as it turned out, I wasn't allowed to shoot any more of that episode, which really kind of stunk for me. But I also understand, uh, protecting people and trying to keep people safe, especially when we were right in the middle of the pandemic at that point. But yeah, working on The Rookie was great. All the cast was awesome. Everyone was cool. Great directors on that show. I had a great experience. I'd love to come back on there at some point in time. I mean, Mac's still alive, baby. Come on.
Give him a chance. I mean, he's a bit pissed off losing his pension and all that, but I let him
You
come
know,
back. Let him come
he
back.
had a drug problem.
What was it like working with Eric Winters? Because you and him had a lot of scenes together, and
It's one of those crazy things about this business because you're supposed to, within 5 minutes of meeting a person, have this relationship with each other. And I actually bumped into Eric at Comic-Con earlier this year. I was literally walking out of the bathroom. We were both, he was there for The Rookie, and I was there for a show that I did called, which one was this? Oh, I was there for Blood of Zeus, which is a Amazon show that I've worked on. And so we were both sharing the same green room. And I came walking out of the bathroom as he was walking in, and I go, dude, what the hell, man? The last time I saw you, you were throwing me you got me fired from my job. And he giggled, and we had a little chat, but he's a super nice guy. Uh, Once again, man, as I said before, it's a huge thing when you come on these shows and the lead actors are friendly and they make you feel like you're doing good work because it just helps everyone. I've had the opportunity to be one of the lead actors on a show, and it means everything when you've got a guest star that's coming in there to make them feel comfortable. And he could not have been more complimentary. We got to have this great scene together where he basically tries to get me cleaned up in the second episode that I did on The Rookie. And it was this really wonderful, beautifully shot scene between these two guys that have a history with each other. And as I said, it's difficult to establish that in 5 minutes, 10 minutes on set, of just meeting someone. But Eric made you feel like you'd been a part of the show from day one, made me feel super comfortable, and just a really, from what I gathered, a really, really good guy. So yeah.
he did seem really nice in like anything that wasn't related to a show he was on or any clips. And so I just want to
I
see.
mean, I think that's just him. That comes through, I think, sometimes. And it's crazy because his character on the show started out as like the real hard
Yeah,
ass
like
that we didn't like very much. And it's also great. I love that about television, the way that characters can grow and change over multiple seasons.
it's funny when you see that there are some characters I've seen in shows where I hate them in season one. And then season two they make a sort of a redemption, and then season three
Yeah.
you love them again. And
Hey,
it's
my character on Friday Night Lights was that. I mean, from the first episode, you think this guy's a real piece of shit, and then by the time the show ends, you start to feel for him. You still don't forgive him for all the terrible things he's done, but you can at least understand where he's coming from and why he is the person he is to a certain degree. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about television. With a film, you've got the beginning, the middle, and the end before you even step on set. You know what's going to happen. And with television, man, you start on day one, and by the time the fifth season rolls around, your character could have completely and totally changed. You never really have an idea of where it's going to go and what's going to happen. So that's one of the beautiful things about television, because you really just are in the moment, uh, and not because you don't know where it's going.
And sorry, one more question about the rookie, and then we're done with that.
Oh,
The hospital that you filmed in when you were guarding, the man on his deathbed, was that a real hospital or was that in a studio? Because I didn't realize the police
okay.
station was fake until recently, and I'm like, oh my god.
I remember that. So the exterior of that hospital is not actually a hospital. The exterior scene that we shot was actually a different day. I'm trying to remember where we shot that hospital scene. I mean, I can remember the neighborhood in Los Angeles and I remember where, but I can't remember if it was an actual hospital. I think it was.
Oh, it
I think,
was.
yeah. Well, I mean, it was definitely a real location. It was not something like we weren't on set. Well, there's two different hospital scenes. That's the other thing. The first episode I did of The Rookie, there's a hospital scene, and that was 100% shot on a set. The second time, my guy has now been kicked off the police force and he's guarding some drug lord or something like that. And I'm standing outside that person's hospital room. That was shot, if it wasn't a real hospital, it was definitely a real building that we shot over in West Hollywood. Um, so that's different. And then when we shot the actual exterior scene of the hospital, that's a totally separate day. And that was the exterior of an administrative building on the Warner Brothers lot.
Oh, that's cool. It always,
Yeah.
it always like. Sometimes I'll watch a show and I'll see, and it looks so real. Like it looks like a real building, and then the actors like on Instagram will go and they'll just walk behind it, and it's just a cardboard wall. And I'm like, oh my god, it's
That's another thing that's really crazy about this business too, is that you'll have a scene where you're outside of a building and you're having a conversation with somebody and you knock on the door and somebody comes to the door and then you enter. And then you shoot the interior of that scene 2 weeks later in a completely and totally different location. I've had that happen numerous times. And that's the crazy thing about this business too, is that you're literally carrying on this conversation that your character was having that was shot on location in a real environment, and then the second location is an interior shot on a set somewhere in Burbank.
it's so funny. Like there are some scenes that one of my little things that I notice in a lot of shows is when a character knocks on a door, they answer in like 2 seconds, like they were waiting for someone to knock on a door. And I
Yes,
and I know
it's
it's
one of my pet peeves too.
and I know it's for TV, so it's got to be quick. But like, you can't just knock and then, oh, hello, like.
Yeah.
Hey,
At the very minimum, I think what you got to do is you got to have the knock, and then you have to have the camera come back to the person who knocked, which can establish at least that maybe there was some time that went by. But
hmm
if you just do the wide shot of them knocking and then the door opening, it feels like now, if you want to get very real, you could just show them standing outside for 20, 30 seconds waiting for the, and then
I,
people would complain about that
I
too.
know. I
So
feel like
yeah.
everyone's attention spans would just complain. Like, why are we gonna sit
Oh,
here for
you
20 seconds?
TikTok these days? Yeah. Yeah,
Everyone's
right.
attention span is very low these days because of TikTok. I've
100%.
noticed
Mine included.
TikTok is a
Mhm.
very watching TikToks is the best 4 hours of my night because I'll be there for 20 minutes and the next minute I look at my phone and it's 2 o'clock and I'm like, I gotta go to bed.
You get the woman pop on that says, "Are you still scrolling? Are you still scrolling?"
Are you
Yeah.
still scrolling? You know when you're doing those military scenes where you're right in the house and you realize that you're like, okay, this is not what it is. Who are we eliminating right here? What's it like
Yeah.
shooting those scenes in like those military scenes?
Well, the cool part about it, I mean, I have worked with guns before, but I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in that field. But we had a great technical advisor on that set, and he was the one who kind of, tells you how you would approach this room, how you would enter this room, how you would scan the room and clear the room and make sure there's no bogeys in there. But then I thought that scene in particular was really kind of it was a great insight into who Earl was, that he was a guy that just kind of followed orders, uh, and yeah, that was, I don't know, it was it was for me just a great insight into who Earl was, that there was a cold-blooded killer in this guy. Even when they knew that this wasn't the right target, it was like it doesn't matter. Boom, even when I shot the guy, he doesn't even look at him. He just kind of pointed the gun at him and yeah.
Do you ever
Um,
when you're on a set or anything, do you ever steal anything like a prop or an outfit or
it depends on what show you're working on. If I was on a show where I was like a 2 episode guest star, no, I'm not stealing
yeah,
anything.
not touching nothing.
No, that's grounds to like just never be invited back on anything.
Sorry,
Steal,
let me
oh,
reword that a little bit better. Do you ever, if you're more of a main character or anything, do you ever take a prop?
100%. Yes, little things, I do remember when I was doing Friday Night Lights, uh, at one point they change high schools in the show. The head coach becomes a coach of a new high school, and the new high school had these really really cool all black hats that just said East on them in red writing, and I was like, man, I want one of those hats. And so one day I just took one, and of course props came following me to my car, and they're like, hey, come on man, we only have a limited amount of those. I'll give you one at some point in time, but you can't just. I'm like, okay, don't tell anyone, sorry. But yeah, I mean, there were some things that I took on Friday Night Lights. This wasn't really stealing. I asked for it. There was a prop on the show that looked like a St. Pauli girl cutout, essentially like this beautiful woman with like a bunch of beers in her hands. And I remember I took that. I still have that. It's literally sitting in my closet right now. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it ever, but I'm never gonna throw it away because it was this thing from this show that meant so much to me. But yeah, like a t-shirt occasionally. I've definitely walked home with some socks.
Do you keep your scripts?
No, oh, yeah, you get to keep your script.
Ooh.
No, I'm not a big thief. I remember I was
Let
very
me.
upset.
I'll reword it. For my future questions, I'll reword it in a more legal manner for you, just so.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yes.
probably smart.
Have you
But when
ever
I was
permanently borrowed items from
There we go.
sets?
That's exactly the way to word it. I was really upset because I was doing this show, or this movie 42, which was a baseball movie. It's about an American baseball player named Jackie Robinson. I don't know if you guys got it in Australia because you guys don't really care about American baseball.
Maybe. I mean, for some reason, our country's more obsessed with America than our own.
You know who
But
Chadwick Boseman is, right? Who played the Black Panther? You know him, and Harrison Ford. You definitely know who that is.
yep.
And so I had a couple of scenes with Harrison Ford and some scenes with Chadwick Boseman, and we were all playing baseball players, and baseball players wear baseball hats. So I remember being like, "Oh man, I'm gonna take my baseball hat." And the last day we were shooting the baseball scenes, I forgot to take my hat, and all the other baseball players took their hats, and we're all out
Oh
that night.
no.
Everybody's got their baseball hats, and I go, "Oh God, that was our last baseball scene. I'm never going to be able to get my baseball hat." And so I called production. I was like, "Is there any way I can get my baseball hat?" And they were like, "Dude, all the uniforms are already on their way back to Los Angeles." So we were shooting
No.
in Atlanta, Georgia. And I never got my baseball hat, and everyone on the team got their baseball hats except me. And I'm still pissed off about
You,
that one to
you,
this day.
you could be funny and just get a photo and frame it and just as like a long lost the hat and just.
Exactly. I also wanted my baseball glove in that movie, and I didn't get my baseball glove. Yeah, I need to be a better thief.
No, no, no. What you gotta
Going
do? Just leave it on accidentally, and if they don't notice, they don't notice.
New Year's is right around the corner. This is my resolution to become a better thief on set.
Yeah. The, book more gigs, be a better thief. Those are your New Year's goals.
Yes, I think those two might be in contrast of each other. I
Hey,
probably will
you.
not be booking any
No, no,
gigs
no.
if I'm a thief.
If anyone questions you, just say you're practicing for a role, a secret role. You're a
There you go.
thief. You're a thief. You gotta
I think that was
practice.
Winona Ryder's thing a few years back. She got busted in stealing something, and that's what her excuse was.
So, you've appeared in Black Ops 6 again. You've been in quite a few Call of Duty games, including Vanguard and also Cold War. You play in Vanguard a really cool character. Same in Black Ops 6 and Cold War. You've saved my butt a few times in those games. And as Raptor 1, I won't lie. But what's it like working with a studio, like that for those games? Because I remember ages ago, someone said it. One guy said it was all over the place. One guy said it was very organized. What's the inside gossip?
It's a different studio every time. So that's the thing. So one time it was Sledgehammer. So it's all Activision. But there's three different companies that make the Call of Duty
Yeah.
games. So they go basically like every 3 years, Sledgehammer gets a game. Every 3 years, Treyarch gets a game. I can't remember what the other one is.
Is it Infinity
Uh,
Ward? I think.
Might be, yeah. Maybe I don't know if I've ever worked for Infinity Ward. I know I've worked for Sledgehammer a couple of times, and I think I've worked for Treyarch once. Or maybe it's the other way around. I can't remember. Um, Vanguard was kind of crazy because Vanguard was once again in the middle of the pandemic. So that was kind of a crazy thing. I know people had problems with Vanguard and blah, 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 blah. But you also have to understand this is in the middle of a pandemic. Like we had to shoot usually when you're doing motion capture scenes, where they put you in the all black outfits and you got all the dots all over you. Usually you'll shoot those over the course of like a 6 month period of time. You'll do 1 day here and 1 day here and 1 day this month and 2 days this month. We shot 30 days back to back to back in the studio. Had we missed 1 day, the video game would not have come out on time.
Wow.
Uh, it was literally to the point where, because it was also the pandemic, had any one of us gotten COVID, we would have been recast because they just literally could not lose days. So it was a very, very crazy time. So that was a chaotic kind of experience. Um, Actually on set, like it didn't feel like it was chaotic, but it was chaotic in the sense that there was this time crunch, that you're up against the wall and you've got to get this game shipped on this date. And so I understand people's frustrations with Vanguard maybe not living up to expectations or whatever, but when you understand the circumstances of the situation, maybe that'll uh, uh, get people to chill out a little bit more. There are human beings that make
Yeah,
these games are fallible, and there are circumstances sometimes that are beyond our control. So that situation was different than anyone that I've ever been on. Um, I remember jokingly with one of the producers, uh, I had said something about they had said that I was their second choice or something at some point, and we were
ouch.
joking about it. Well, it doesn't bother me. I got the job, so that's all that matters.
Actually, true. Yeah, not ouch. I'll remove that one.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all. But anyway, we were joking about that, and they said, "Do you remember on the call sheet there were four names at the bottom of the call sheet?" And I said, "Yeah, what was that?" And he says, "Those were the four replacements for the four main characters if any one of you had gotten sick."
Oof.
Because that's just the situation that they were in. We basically had an actor in waiting, in case one of us had tested positive for COVID, because it was right in the middle of the pandemic. So it was crazy, crazy times. Um, but we
It would
got it out, shipped it,
it would suck. Imagine you did like 3/4 of the work and then you just get really sick and you can't finish it. That would kill me. If I did that, I'd hate that.
Yeah. I've had episodes of TV shows where there are scenes that I've been in where I've gotten cut out of a scene, and that happens all the time. Uh, I can't imagine getting cut out of something where you're that big a part. Like that would be a real blow to your ego, I think, at that point in time. Thank God, haven't had that experience yet.
Do you think you'd want to make a return in more Call of Duty games?
Oh yeah, I get a lot of joy out of it. It's fun, man. The sessions are fun. It's great. The one thing I really love about doing voiceover work is that you get to play characters you'll never get to play on camera. In Call of Duty, I'm playing like a 22-year-old, or maybe he's a little older, but like he's like a 25-year-old hotshot pilot. Think like Maverick in Top Gun, and I'm 48 years old, man. No one's gonna cast me as that these days. Although Maverick's,
Yeah, see,
50.
no, you have a chance. You have a chance
Yeah.
to maybe
Uh,
do it.
but it was fun, man. It's fun. You get to play these characters sometimes that you will never get to play in real life. And that's the real joy of doing voiceover work. I
Wanna?
love it, man. And you can sit here, like I've got my mic right here in my
I was
place.
looking at that before. Yep.
Like I basically turned one of my rooms into a studio. Basically, it's soundproofed and yeah, man, it's great because I'll get an audition. I just walk in my underwear and record. I don't need to go anywhere or do anything. It's pretty great.
I
you
think
know?
I think that'd be a
You
goal
don't
of
have to
mine.
customize anything. Oh, that's the best part. What were you
I, th-
saying?
I think one of my goals, one of the biggest mistakes I've made, or not mistake, but I remember I wanted to, I've always wanted to be an actor and a voice actor, but I started in COVID. I started in 2020. That was probably the worst decision I've ever made. You know,
Yeah.
it was brutal, especially in Australia because we're like nothing's here. So like you get a couple big productions, but everything else is either a short film or like it's not America where there
Yeah.
is so
But
many
the great thing
states.
about voiceover work is that you don't have to be in the States. You can
Exactly.
do voiceover work literally from anywhere. If you've got a good enough studio in your place, you can do it from home. If your studio from home isn't good enough, there's a million and one. I mean, I've recorded voiceovers all over the world. I was in Budapest and had to record one for something that I had booked. I've been literally all over the world, and they'll find a studio nearby for you to go to and record if they want you. So that's the good thing about voiceovers. And I've been on the road and recorded from hotel rooms. I actually have a crazy, funny story about I had an audition for something. I can't remember what it was, but a lot of video games that you go in for, there's a lot of yelling and screaming and, we got a bomb, go, 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 kind of thing. And I was in New Mexico working on that show Longmire, and I had to record a voiceover. And I've learned that if you take your voiceover mic, so let's just pretend that this is like my voiceover mic,
Yep.
take it and you pull the sheets of the bed over the top of you, you're basically making your own sound booth. Well, it happened to be like 95 degrees that day in New Mexico. You have to turn the air conditioner off in the background because otherwise you're going to hear that humming noise. So I'm underneath my sheets, butt naked with my mic, and I've got the sheets pulled over the top of me, and I'm screaming and I'm yelling and blah, 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 and I'm recording this voiceover. And I suddenly feel like a change in you can feel like a change in the temperature, not temperature, but the tone of the room.
Yep.
And I put the sheets back, and the maid had come in.
Oh,
And I'm butt naked under the sheets yelling into a microphone with the maid standing there. And I can only imagine to this day what this woman is thinking when she sees this, because
just
that's
some
probably,
naked guy screaming with no aircon on, just sweating. That
yes.
I would.
Yeah,
What would? Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm disappearing from that country. I ain't coming back.
right. Exactly. Yeah, I can only imagine that she's probably to this day has nightmares trying to figure out what the hell was going on in that moment.
What is
But
this guy? What is this guy into? What the hell is he doing in
yeah,
this
right.
hotel room? Did you get the
Yeah,
gig?
I can't remember.
Oh, actually,
Let's just say yes. Yeah, why
yes.
not?
Yeah, we you got the gig, so it all paid off. You know, I did see a credited role that you did in Battlefield Hardline. That's actually
Mhm.
funny enough, also one of my favorite Battlefield games. So I wanted to ask about it. I
Yeah.
was it what'd you do?
Battlefield Hardline. I think I'm one of the guys in multiplayer.
Oh,
All I remember on that is it was like the gift that kept on giving because I probably recorded 40 sessions on that game. Because anytime that they would what do they call it when they do an update to the game?
DLC maybe.
Yes, yes. When they added like a DLC, they'd call you in and they'd be like, "Hey, so now in multiplayer, you can get a rocket launcher." And I'm like, "Okay." And so they'd be like, "We need you to just record all these lines." And the lines would be like, "He's got a rocket launcher straight ahead, rocket launcher to the left, rocket launcher to the right, rocket launcher up there, rocket launcher down there." And that was essentially my session. I'd go in, I'd get paid, and then I'd go home. And then they'd call you back a month later and they go, "Hey, you can now buy a helicopter in the game." And they go, "Okay, he's got a helicopter over there, helicopter to the left, helicopter to the right." And so it was, as I said, one of the greatest gigs I've ever had in my life. You go in, you work for an hour, you get paid, not bad.
Next question. How much of the cast have you met from the Call of Duty games? Because I know you worked with quite a few of them in Vanguard, but what about the other ones, the newer ones as well?
That's kind of the strange thing. So unless you're doing motion capture on a lot of these games, you don't really meet any of the cast. You may meet them in passing. I mean, Chad Collins and I actually worked together on Shooter, so I know Chad from Shooter, but I've never worked with Chad on Call of Duty, but we do have that in common. Uh, uh, you know, when you're doing motion capture, you're on set together. But a lot of the time with video games, like you've never even come into contact with the other actors. That's kind of the crazy thing about voiceover work. That's one of the downsides of voiceover work is that you don't get to work with a lot of these other actors and you don't actually get to meet them and have scenes with them. So yeah.
Do you play video games yourself? I tried googling it, but I couldn't find anything about it.
I'm not any good at them, but I do play. I'm really trying to play Black Ops 6 right now. I play the zombies levels all the time, uh, like Liberty Falls or whatever. The farthest I've ever gotten in it is I've got to level 40 in Liberty Falls, and then after that I can't exfil anymore. I get destroyed.
It's
So
one of the funniest things. Growing up, I could play video games for hours and hours, but now the thing is, I was like, do I have work tomorrow? Do I have to do this? Do I have to plan? Like, it's and
here's the problem for me is that all these kids out there have gotten so good at them. Like, I mean, I try to play multiplayer Call of Duty, and the minute you get online, the minute you spawn, you're dead. These kids are way too good at it, you know? I remember years back though, Michael B. Jordan and I were both on Friday Night Lights together, and both of us played Call of Duty pretty regularly. And this was, golly, it was probably 16 years ago, 15 years ago.
wow.
And Mike showed up to set one day and he's like, "Hey man, I got you a present." And I was like, "What?" And he'd gotten headsets. And so we had headsets, and it's the first time I'd ever played with a headset. And the two of us, I'm telling you, we must have played Call of Duty that night for 12, 13 hours straight to the point where our sides were hurting from laughing so hard. Because I just remember one moment where Mike, we've been playing each other, but we're on separate teams, you know what I mean? And I see him running across this field, and I had just gotten like a nuke or something, one of those things where you could drop a bomb on him.
Ah,
I'm like,
yep.
Mike, field, and he's like, what? And I'm like, oh my God. And I dropped the bomb on him, and I'm just dying, hysterically laughing. But we showed up to set the next day. We're in the hair and makeup trailer, and I remember the ladies in the hair and makeup trailer being like, why are your eyes so red? Because I was up all night playing Call of Duty and my eyes were like bloodshot red from playing all night with Mike. But yeah, so like back in the day, I used to play all the time. And it's not that I was much better, it's that I think the players were much worse 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Like, even
Either that or
now,
my reaction times have gotten that much worse.
like
But yeah, yeah.
but now they're too good. Like, I can't keep up with them anymore. Now that I actually, I work and all that, I can't keep up.
They're too good, and that's the other thing is that it is a time suck. And so you have to be careful that like, okay, I'm going to allow myself to play for an hour or maybe 2 hours, a couple days a week, but I can't do this thing where I'm, sitting there till my eyes are bloodshot playing for 13 hours straight anymore. Like I can't do that.
Do you have a favorite video game?
Oh man. I mean, I'm biased, but the original Last of Us is arguably the best story I've ever come across in a video game, in my personal opinion. Um, there's something about that story, man, that just hit me viscerally. I remember specifically playing that game, and there's the moment where Ellie is in that restaurant that's on fire, and the guy's chasing after her, and my heart was pounding the whole time playing that, and I've never felt that kind of connection to a character, and I think a lot of that is because of the wonderful voice work that was done by all the actors in that game. Ashley Johnson was fantastic. The direction by Neil Druckmann, it just in the writing that Neil brought to that game, but it made me viscerally care about these characters. So I was very thrilled to be a part of The Last of Us Part Two. I mean, I had a small part in The Last of Us, spoiler alert. Um, but yeah, that game just hit me viscerally. I think it was kind of this precursor of what I think video games can be, that you can have good story. We talk about musical theater, like American musical theater, when it first started. Um, it was primarily they just grabbed a bunch of different songs and then they wrote a story around it. And then over time, as it grew and it developed, um, it became guys writing story and writing music at the same time. and incorporating them. And it's kind of the same thing with video games. I think with video games back in the day, it was like, okay, we've got this battle scene, we've got this battle scene, we've got this battle scene. How do we connect those things? And now all of those things are being written at the same time. So the story is as much of a part of the game as the playing of the game. And so I think that we've just seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what video games can be moving forward. I'm excited for it, and I'm excited to be a part of that industry, because I do feel like I'm one of the people who got, I don't want to say in on the ground floor, but you know, I've done a lot of mocap at this point in time. And so there's a lot of people I know that are actors in my business that are like, what's it like doing mocap? And they've never done it. They have no experience with it. It's great, man. I love it. It's to me like doing theater. It's crazy is far as we've advanced technologically, it's still really just a matter of playing make believe when it all comes down to it.
I actually just picked up a copy of Last of Us 1 and Part 2 because I haven't played it yet, which sucks because I love story games. But I remember
Yeah,
when Part 2 came out for the first time, when my brother still lived here, he woke up so early and he had, because he's a big Last of Us fan, and he was there for hours in the line waiting to get his copy of Part 2. And I remember how big the hype was for these games. Like,
yeah. If you haven't played Last of Us yet?
I just started playing Part 1.
Okay, well, I won't spoil anything for you, but yeah, man, I think you'll enjoy it. You have to text me and let me know. But
Heck,
as far as gameplay is concerned, I mean, there's so many games that I've played I mean, this one's crazy. I still play occasionally Star Wars Battlefront, the original one that came out. There's one level that I just play over and over and over again and try to get the fastest time that I possibly can on. And it's the Battle of Sullust or whatever. And I play that one. I had that game with me in India. The game's 8 years old. I still play it occasionally just because it's like, how fast can I play this one level? Uh,
do you have a sick
so yeah,
gaming setup? Does Derek Phillips have a cool gaming
nothing crazy.
setup?
No, I should probably, but I don't. No.
Just put in your studio a little bit to the side or something, little gaming setup.
I have a big TV here that I probably should, but I just play in my living room when I play.
That's fair.
I need to have like the chair and the whole thing, but I don't have all that.
Maybe you should. Are there any franchises you'd like to be a part of?
Any franchises
Any
that I'd like to
game
be a part of?
franchises that are currently active that you'd like to be a part of, or you know?
I mean, because there's ones that I audition for all the time, and it's usually only after the fact you're like, man, I really would love to have been a
Actually,
part of that
two and
game.
one for this. How is there a franchise that you'd like to be in, and also is there an audition that you've missed that you really wish you got?
Oh, there's so many, so many. But yeah, God of War would be fun to be a part of.
Oh,
I
that
like
would
the
be.
God of War.
What's the
That'd be
biggest?
really, really fun.
What's an audition you did for like a franchise that you've missed that you really regret? Because I know actually name a couple. We're here. Name a couple. What are some things you've auditioned for and wish you
Well,
could have
that's the
got?
thing too. To be honest with you, when it comes to video games, 99.9% of the time, you don't know what you're auditioning for. I can tell you the one that I auditioned for. They didn't tell me what it was, but I knew what it was. And it was for the new Wolverine game that's going to be coming out, and I got the audition to play Wolverine, and I didn't get it, and I know who did, and he's a great guy.
The industry
And I worked with
secrets.
him.
Oh,
Yeah, I worked with this actor. That's all I can say. I don't know if it's public knowledge that he's
I'd be on the
Wolverine.
safer side. Just don't mention
Yeah,
anything.
but I got to audition for Wolverine, and that was really, really cool. I still have my copy of the tape,
Oh,
just because it may be the only time I ever get to play Wolverine in the history of my life.
I feel like
And that would have been really, really.
there's definitely a few roles that I feel like if anyone plays, it's just their legacy. Like, you've got Spider-Man, Batman, like Wolverine, like
I got really close on Telltale's Batman
that would
to
be
play
cool.
Batman.
I
Well,
if
I've
I
auditioned to play the Joker
if
multiple times, and I've never. Yeah.
if I ever got any of those roles, it's gone in my Instagram bio to the day I die. If I play Batman or anything, that's in my bio for the till the
And
day I die.
everybody wants to be Batman at some point, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Would
there was a shirt that went around. It said something like,
have you ever?
"Just be yourself. Unless you can be Batman, then be Batman."
You could
And
always
yeah, I
just
think that
you just hit him with the. You've never seen me and Batman in the same room, and then that you just leave it at that.
But I've gotten very close a couple of times to playing Batman, and that would have been really, really fun. Um, but at the end of the day, I'm just really thankful for the franchises that I've gotten to be a part of. I've gotten to be a part of Fallout. I got to be a part of The Last of Us. Uh, but a lot of times with these games, they don't even tell you what you're auditioning for. Like even when you're auditioning for Batman, it's like he's a brooding guy who's also very wealthy,
It's
and they tell you that this is a comic book game, and it's through DC, and it's like, all right, I can do the math here.
I don't
I know who this is.
I don't remember what it
Uh,
was. There was someone revealed their audition tape, and I remember it was for like a really big movie franchise, but the original name was like something a robot generated. It was like Scratch and something, and like the actual franchise is like Scream or and it's like the silliest audition name, but it's
Well,
for
that's the thing that gets really frustrating is like the more of these that you work on and the more that you have going at the same time, your agents will call and they'll say, so, okay, for instance, I was working on a TV show called Blood of Zeus, but then the call name of one of the Call of Duties that I worked on a while back was called Zeus. And so you'd go, my agent would call and be like, hey, you've got a session with Zeus on Tuesday at 9 a.m. And you're like, okay, great. So you go in, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going in for Blood of Zeus. And you walk in, and you're like, these are all the Call of Duty people. Oh, that's right. Zeus is Call of Duty. I did a couple of episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. back in the day, and their code name for the show was Ragtime or something like that, or Ragtag, I believe. And so before I even worked on the show, I get a phone call and they go, hi, is Derek there? This is Ragtag. And I go, what? And they go, this is Ragtag. And I go, I think you have the wrong number. And I hang up and they call back and they go, this is Ragtag. Please don't hang up. This is Ragtag. And I go, I don't know what Ragtag is. And they go, this is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, just tell me that.
no,
Um,
you've kind of been in a lot of franchises, actually. I have a list here for one of my questions. You're an Alien, you're in The Last of Us, Fallout, The Walking Dead, Mortal Kombat 1. Like, you've been in
All about
so...
Walking Dead. I did Walking Dead, yeah.
Yeah, you've been so many. I had a question. I was going to ask what your favorite was, but I don't think you'd be able to pick. Or maybe The Last of Us from your past question. But
I don't know about favorite,
what was your
but
most memorable?
I mean, it's crazy too because the one that people maybe shit on the most was two games that I've worked on. One of them that literally just died. I worked on a game called Concord
I,
for
s-
4 years.
I saw that. I remember seeing when I saw that in your
And I
IMDb.
gotta
I was
tell you,
like,
we had just the most wonderful cast. It was a real joy working with all the people on that game. The game just people did not like it.
I
And I get it. But I had a wonderful time working with those people. I had a great time working on Vanguard. And it's unfortunate that the games didn't hit. It's not always a correlation that just because you have a great time working on it, that the game's going to be a success. And there are games that I've worked on that were uh not that didn't enjoy, but it was maybe harder work or maybe I didn't feel like I was as great in that part. And that winds up, I mean, it's crazy to me that I mean, I have a tiny little part in Call of Duty playing Raptor 1. And for whatever reason, like Raptor 1 has this kind of cult following.
it's
uh, People love Raptor One. I'm like, he doesn't even do anything. All he did, I mean, I get why people love him because I'm the guy who saves you when you're trying to get out of the zombie level.
hmm
I understand that, but uh, but it's funny what hits and what doesn't. Sometimes I'll never quite understand that as an actor. It's funny to me sometimes. In Fallout, my character is the head of one of these factions. And there were years in a row where I was getting people sending me videos of them beating up my character. And then you could steal my character's coat. So it's just all these videos of my character getting beat up, and you steal his coat, and he's left there knocked out in his underwear. I mean, I'm just happy that anyone connects to any of it and that I get to do it, man. I love what I get to do for a living. And I feel blessed every day that I get to be a part of this business.
I feel like if you are a part of something and you have a great cast and a great crew, I feel like that beats what the performance will do afterwards. I feel like, at least for me,
At the end of the day, you just never know what's going to click and what's not going to. I mean, with Concord, that's a prime example. When we started Concord, Concord was an independent game from an independent company. Sony got to see some of the stuff that we were working on, and Sony was like, "This is going to be a huge hit." And Sony put all this money behind it. And then the game came out and it just did not find an audience. And it's frustrating and it sucks because, these are, I think part of the reason Concord hurts is because it was something that we worked on for 4 years. I got to do maybe 30 or 40 vignettes that will never see the light of day. That's frustrating, you put all this work into something and then people never even get to see it, you know. That's frustrating. And it's not even for me. I've had a pretty decent career in this business, but there were a lot of younger actors that were on that game, a lot of actors that haven't had the opportunities that I have. And it frustrates me more for them, because there's all their work that no one will ever get to see. And there were some really brilliant actors on that game. And it's just, it's frustrating but it is what we signed up for, and it's the nature of the business, Uh
I
and it's just the way the cookie crumbles. I'll throw out all the cliches. Yeah. It's hard, some of that stuff is really tough to deal with. This just came out the other day. Secret Level just did a Concord episode, and I have a small part in it, and you get to see what some of the story behind Concord would have been going forward. It's a great episode, and no one's ever going to see any of the work that we got to do on the rest of the game. And it's, it sucks. It is what it is, though. There's no guarantees in this business. There's no guarantees in this life.
hmm
um and so I've always kind of gone at it from the standpoint that, like, it's not real until the check clears. It's not my job until it airs, kind of thing. And I think if you go in with that kind of, it's not being negative. I think it's just being realistic that that's kind of, unfortunately, the way it goes sometimes. I had an episode of Friday Night Lights where I had some great stuff, and I remember calling my dad and saying, "Hey, I've got this really great episode coming up next week." And he's like, "Oh, great." And the episode's airing, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, that scene's not in it, and my next scene's not in it. And I'm like, well, if those first two scenes aren't in it, then surely my fourth, fifth, and sixth scenes won't be in it. And then sure enough, all of my scenes from that episode had gotten cut.
It's
And my dad calls me and he's like, "I thought you were supposed to be in this episode." And I was like, "I did too."
I
You
I
know,
do apologize for mentioning a lot of my own stuff in this interview, but I got another story I'd love to share.
great.
I had a similar experience when I did the assembly because we filmed so much. Like we were there for months. We were filming. We did
Yeah,
we did practice at a university, like our training, and then we moved to the ABC and we filmed there. So for like 3 days a week for months. And I remember
yeah,
watching the show. I didn't even see the episodes. Like I saw the first one before it came out, and then I was watching
yeah.
the rest with my family. I'm like, oh, wait for this moment. I can't wait to show you this moment, and cut out of that moment. Or it's like because obviously they had to fit months of work into 6 episodes, so obviously not everything's gonna be there. And I remember watching
That's
it, I'm like, oh, I love doing this scene. I can't wait to show you. Straight, not they didn't do it. They didn't include it.
and that's the other thing. The other thing about this business too is, like, you'll go down and you'll shoot something and you're there for 3 weeks or a month or 2 months, and then it comes out and you're like, "I'm only in like 7 minutes of this."
It's it's so
And it's not even that they cut you, it's just that's how long it takes sometimes to put some of this stuff together. And
that's what the editors
you know,
think were best.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes you have a great moment and the camera's on the other actor. And it is what it is, man. That's the nature of the business.
It even
Uh
sucks because I remember there was one particular one it was the last episode, and I said, oh, we filmed this really funny scene at the end, and I said at the start, and I kept just wait, just keep watching, just keep watching. Roll credits. They didn't even include it. I'm like, okay, I wasted all your time.
it's tough, man. And unfortunately, you stick around long enough in this business, it won't be the last time. I can
Mm-mm.
guarantee, you know. But it is the nature of it, and you just gotta take your wins with your losses.
Hey, without this show, I wouldn't be interviewing you right now, so I'm calling it as a win.
Yeah, and it's all rungs up the ladder, all steps up the ladder. Even the biggest names in the business have scenes that get cut and moments that get cut and monologues that get cut. And some of it's for time, some of it is for there's it doesn't help tell the story in the way that they want to tell the story. There have been scenes that I've been in before and I knew before we even shot it was going to get cut, you know. because it
Ouch.
was one of those where you just know, like, they don't need this. You don't need this moment to tell the story. And there's really nothing I can do to keep this scene in here, and eventually a smart editor is going to realize that. And they do, nine
Hmm.
times out of 10, you know?
What do you like to do outside of acting? Like, do you have any hobbies, interest?
I mean, I love my dog.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's my biggest hobby. We'll be going to the park immediately following this because I have a penance to pay now for being in this room, without her for an hour and a half. Um, but yeah, I love playing with my dog. During COVID, I built a gym in my garage and I work out pretty regularly, and that's something that just kind of keeps me sane. I love going to the movies. I mean, it's funny because when people ask me what I do outside of this business, it's like I still love going to the movies. I still love going to see theater. I love reading. I do like playing video games. I love working out. I am kind of a homebody in a lot of respects, especially as I've gotten older. I don't drink. I don't really go to bars. I don't, do any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, as I've gotten older, I'm just more of a homebody.
Kind of the opposite of your character, because you play these drunk characters, and in real life you're the most sober
Well,
thing.
I partied a lot when I was younger, so that I don't need to now.
Yeah, you just got all years of drinking out the way just so you can save yourself.
Basically, yes. I think that's exactly what happened. About 8 years ago, I was like, I think I'm done.
Oh, isn't it? Don't you guys have to wait until you're 21 to drink in America? Isn't that?
Yes. What is
Yeah,
it in Australia?
18.
I mean, I've always kind of personally thought if you're old enough to join the military and die for your country,
You're old enough
you're
to.
old enough to drink. But
Who do you think, if you had to fight Batman and you could only bring one of your characters that you've done from your past, like any role you've done to fight Batman, who would you want to pick?
oh man,
'Cause
that's a good question.
I feel like either way, you're both about to get absolutely destroyed. I mean, actually,
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna say Heron, the character I play in Blood of Zeus. I think he would destroy Batman, actually. I don't even think it would be close. He's got like Superman almost S powers, like he can shoot lightning bolts, and although
actually,
Superman or Batman's smarter than Heron, but Batman always finds a way to level the playing field.
I don't know. He might do a cinematic move and then and then he just drops to the ground. You never know. And my last question for you, this is the first time I can actually ask this, and if you could get a pop figure of one of your characters, who would you want it to be as well?
Oh man, that's funny. I have a friend of mine whose son is he's a friend too. Ravi Conyers, who's in the new Skeleton Crew TV show. He's the kid with the puffy black hair. Um, but he just got his first pop-up character. And I was like, oh man, I'm so jealous. I want one of those. And he's like 14 years old. But yeah, I'm trying to think. Maybe Heron would be a cool one to have. I think Elder Maxon, the character I played in Fallout, he would make a good. What are they called? Pop characters, pop-up characters? What do they call them?
Pop figures?
Pop figures, yeah. I think he'd make a cool pop figure because he's at least got some, distinguishing traits about him physically. Yeah, maybe those two.
Those two would be your pick.
Yeah,
I used to
I
be.
think so.
Well,
Yeah.
Derek Phillips, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview with me, mate. I hope you
But
enjoyed it. Hope you had
yeah, I did.
fun.
It was good.
One day, I think, if I ever do like either a 50th or 100th episode, you got to come back for the reunion, I reckon.
Do it. I'm
Let's do it.
down. I'm down. Good
Awesome.
luck in the future.
Thank you so much, mate. I hope you have a good one.
You too.
Oh,
Have a